In the dark depths of history, beneath the ancient city of Rome, lies a labyrinthine catacomb that sends shivers down the spine of even the bravest souls. Known as the Catacombs of Calixtus, this eerie maze of tunnels served as a clandestine place of worship for early Christians, hidden away from the watchful eyes of the Roman authorities. But within the shadowy passages of the catacombs lurked a terrifying secret, the legend of the Martyr's Maze. It is whispered that those who dared to venture too deep into the catacombs would become hopelessly lost, their cries swallowed by the darkness as they succumbed to madness or worse. The very air seemed to reverberate with the echoes of their torment, a chilling reminder of the perils that lie beneath the surface of history. To this day, the catacombs of Calixtus remain a haunting enigma, beckoning the brave and foolhardy alike to explore their haunted depths. But tread carefully, for within these ancient tunnels, the line between the living and the dead blurs, and the spirits of the past still linger, eager to ensnare the unwary in their web of terror. I was drowsy, and so I went back to sleep. I believe it was the next day that my mom was folding clothes in my room, and she told me my room stunk, and I needed to clean up whatever that smell was. I ignored her because I really didn't smell anything. I wish I didn't ignore her, though. That night, our dad put the air conditioning on because it was simply too hot. After we all watched a movie as a family, everyone started getting ready for bed. I went to my room and played video games for a little while before getting sleepy. By that time, I turned off the TV and console and rolled on my side to go to sleep like I always did. Tonight, I didn't have the fan on because the air conditioning was on, so there was just the sound of the air blowing out from the vents in the ceiling. I fell asleep, but once again I woke up not long after. I didn't know what the sound I heard was. All I heard was the vent fan blowing air. Then when it stopped blowing the air, the room was silent, and I heard something breathing, but it wasn't my breathing though. I looked around the room. The closet door was shut, so there was no way it was coming from there. Part of my childlike innocence assumed it was my younger sister playing a prank. I got on the floor and looked at the one place I could think to look, under the bed. I lifted the little piece of cloth that dangles at the bottom of the bed, and there was a very large person laying under my bed on a pile of blankets. Their head was facing me, but their eyes were closed. I fell backward, and basically Crab walked out of the room screaming, "Dad." I heard my parents' door swing open and my parents yelling and concerned. I pointed into my room and said, "Under the bed." And my dad went and pulled out this very large, dirty-looking man. I remember my dad quite easily physically forcing the man outside as my mom called 911. I'm sure he went to jail for a while or something. I'm sure he went to jail for a while, or maybe not because he was homeless, who knows. This did a lot of mental damage to me, where I didn't even want to sleep in my own room anymore, or leave alone in that. I had to sleep in the middle of my house with my parents for a while. Then my dad installed security cameras all over the house. We threw out everything that was opened in the fridge because we had no idea what he put his mouth on in there. The fear of someone being under my bed stayed with me for a long time, years to come. We don't even know how long he was hiding under my bed. It could have been a few days. The smell, the person going through the fridge, the randomly waking up every night for a few days. Whether he meant harm or not, having someone hiding under your bed is every child's biggest nightmare. This story is from my great-grandfather, who is currently at the ripe old age of 101. He told this story at family gatherings for years. He's from the city of Yaroslava in Russia. I guess it was the Soviet Union when he was born there. Being from the USSR, of course, he served under the Soviet Union during World War II, then fleeing to the United States a few years after to escape communism. He told me this story again recently. It had been not long after the Battle of Ilikiluki, which wasn't a major battle of the war, but it still ended up in a large amount of Soviet and German bloodshed, as most battles at the time did. It was the evening, and according to my great-grandfather, it was very cold that night, like hellish cold. They were in a small house/building that was one of the few with no damage to it, which made it nice because it was warm. Him and his comrades were celebrating with drinks, songs, laughing, and joking, what you could imagine a celebration would look like. At some point in the evening, two fellow soldiers walked into my building. My great-grandfather and his friend Sergei didn't care for these two. It was apparently because they were loudmouths and were just unpleasant guys. Sergei asked my great-grandfather if he wanted to go out and have a smoke. He agreed, and the two put on their heavy coats and walked out into the freezing cold air. My great-grandfather pulled out a cigarette, as did Sergei, and then he lit both of their cigarettes. They were talking for a while, both enjoying their cigarette and basking in the glory that came along with winning that battle that had been going on for about 2 months. After my great-grandfather finished a cigarette, they were both about to go back inside when they heard what sounded like a man scream from the woods in the distance. Fearing that it was the scream from one of their comrades possibly being attacked by a patrol of pissed-off Germans, they went back inside and grabbed their guns because of the fact that there might be armed Germans. Much more soldiers coming into the woods. My great-grandpa mentioned that as he went deeper into the woods, he started to get a weird feeling. Like someone was was shredded and it looked like he had been scalped. Another thing that stood out to my great-grandfather was the smell. He couldn't describe the smell, saying it wasn't like